Good evening, YouTube world. Again, as always, Gordon Causey, and as always, Candy the Wonderbot. Thank you for tuning in. Today is Saturday, the 18th of May, 11:32 p.m. in my time zone, which is the Eastern time zone, Toronto, New York, Montreal, etc. And but regardless of what time it is when you're watching this, morning, afternoon, evening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you for the subscriptions. I'm up over 910 now. Unbelievable. I have Daniel Cooperman, who's come on. Greetings from Montreal, China. Salut, Daniel Cooperman. Ma français terrible. My horrible French. I'm not going to be speaking in French on this video. I did live in Quebec City for 2011 to 2015, but I'm bien plus confortable en anglais qu'en français. I'm much more comfortable in French than in English, or rather, much more comfortable in English than in French. But let me take care of Candy, because if I don't give her a treat at the start of the video, she gives me no peace. Shake paw, shake paw, shake. Lay down. Speak. Speak. Good. Come on. There you go. All right, my dog is taken care of. I want to talk about something that I do think will be coming down the pipe. I do think we will face a situation. I'm not going to make any predictions as to when. I'm not going to put a time date on my prediction, but I do think we will, in the months, years to come, face another vaccine mandate. I think it could be the bird flu. I think there's that's very much in play. Whether it'll be bird flu or something else, I don't know. Daniel Cooperman loved my Trudeau joke. Which one? I probably told about a dozen on here. But at any rate, in understanding how another vaccine, in understanding how another vaccine mandate could be brought in, I think it's important to recognize how the last one was brought in. If you had asked anyone in 2017, 18, 19, or years previous, if they could envision a situation where Canadians would be forced to take a rushed vaccine that had been sped through development in just months, taking a 10-year process and then claiming that they moved at warp speed. Warp speed, incidentally, is where you bend the fabric of space-time. It's a wonderful science fiction concept, used in Star Trek movies, but it's not science. At this juncture, it is science fiction. Thumbs up to Daniel about the joke he heard. Anyway, so how did we get to a vaccine mandate last time? Well, firstly, we had propaganda on steroids starting in December, January, February, December 2019, and ramping up through January and February of 2020. Very quickly, SARS-CoV-2 went from being the novel coronavirus to, within just a few short weeks, couple months, it became the deadly coronavirus. Everywhere you turned, the deadly coronavirus. And have you heard about coronavirus? Oh yeah, it's deadly. I heard it. Deadly coronavirus that was ravaging nursing homes, hospices, and long-term cares in places like Bobcaygeon, Ontario. You would turn on the nightly news, and with ominous sounding music, dun dun dun, more terrifying news from Bobcaygeon, Ontario, as the tsunami of death continues at the Tall Pines nursing home. Story to follow. And yeah. Guess what? Before COVID came along, people died in nursing homes in Canada every single day. Nursing homes, hospices, long-term care are palliative type settings. There are end-of-life settings. People move into a long-term care facility. They never, next to never, will move out of a long-term care facility. Long-term care is heaven's waiting room. I have Norman Anila saying, I like how you poke fun at Trudeau with your jokes. I'd like to do more than poke fun at him. I'd love to get into the ring with him. That boxing match he had with Patrick Brazeau all those years ago was it was staged. Daniel Cooperman, I'm the only unvaxxed in my family. I'm the only one who didn't get sick. For what it's worth, everyone in my family, in my household, 3 of us, we all got sick in February of 22 without no jabs. And it was a mild flu. It was a mild flu-like illness for all 3 of us. My youngest, 10 years of age, he would have been 2022. He would have been 8 at that time. He wasn't even a 24-hour bug. With me, it lingered on I got it on a Friday night. Saturday, I felt under the weather. Sunday, I felt pretty much back to normal. By Monday, I was 100% fully recovered. And my wife had barely touched her. So a genuine nothing burger. We were all able to recover by virtue of our own immune systems without anything messing up, anything circulating in our body, no toxic spike protein juice. I learned more about vaccines than I ever thought I ever would. I have even had a conversation with Dr. Robert Malone, did a podcast with him. And for those who don't know, most on my channel will be aware, but he was granted 7 or 8 patents on mRNA, on this mRNA vaccine platform. And if you go to Google Scholar, it will list him as an inventor of mRNA and DNA vaccines. An inventor, not the inventor. He was a major contributor, but I think it stretches things to say that he is solely responsible, that he is the inventor. That's pushing it. So at any rate, there was this massive propaganda about the deadly coronavirus. Then, of course, in March, to further cement that into the consciousness of the populace, we had the lockdown measures because we get and immediately there should have been a disconnect if people were thinking, but they weren't, because fear robs a person of their capacity for critical thinking. I was in the military at the time. Yes, at this base on my shirt. And so I'm essential. And so there was a disconnect right away from me. Wait a minute, it's deadly. You don't want to catch this thing. Oh my God. Oh, but all you people in these 270 plus industries and workspaces in Ontario, you can go to work. If you're a cashier at a grocery store, you can risk it. But everyone else, you got to stay home. You got to stay home. Come on. And I remember the kids, young guys I was working with, I'm old, I'm coming up on 58. They were not taking it overly serious, but they were being a little cautious around me, thinking I'm an old guy and I might be a little more worried. But they soon found out that I didn't give a rat's rosy rear end about altering my behavior to the max. I kept going to church throughout the pandemic. Anytime I could find a congregation that was gathering, I would go. I wasn't able to go in March, April, and then in May, a church in town here where I live, Brighton, Ontario, opened to outdoor public worship. And so on the grounds of their church, they have a large back field, and they got a flatbed truck and had the worship team up on it. And we were shaking hands, hugging, behaving like normal. Now, some people were sitting in their cars, hiding, some of them with masks on, but a lot of us were out and gathering and, pressing the flesh, as it were, going to keep up with what's being written. Townhouse Gardener is back. Good to see you. I'm not vaxxed. My 3 grown kids aren't vaxxed, and my granddaughter isn't vaxxed. No way. Well, the thing is, we are in the minority. It's over, in terms of Canada, it's over 80% of the population got at least 2 jabs, and then it dropped off. I had a conversation. I was at work just not today, but yesterday, so on Friday, with a woman, and I'm very open about it. I have no reticence whatsoever in telling people that I'm not vaccinated. And we were talking about coffee shops. We were talking about Tim Hortons versus another one in town. And I said, it still gets under my skin that I could not go into Tim Hortons and sit down and have a simple cup of coffee, all because I refused a poorly tested and what I view to be ultimately a dangerous poke. And she told me that she was this is what she told me. She could be lying, I don't know, but she said she was an OR nurse, an operating room nurse, and she said that she declined it, but finally did get it when it was required in around September of 2021. When they told her you have to have it in order to work, she got them. But she said she stopped at the 2, which I think is the majority of the population. As a matter of fact, only roughly 15% of Canadians are up to date on their shots. According to Health Canada and the NIAC, the National Advisory Committee on, I forget the exact acronym, but it's NACI or something like that, National Advisory Committee on Immunizations, NACI, I think that's the acronym. They're in Health Canada still advising that if it has been 6 months since your last dose, you need to get a booster. And we all probably know someone who's on shot number 7, 8, 9. And keep up. Never comply again. Sheriff of YouTube says the next plan, you know what, is going to laugh harder than ever. Do not comply ever again. I'm going to cut right to it because this is how I think I could see it coming the next time. And I'm going to frame it in the context of bird flu. If you haven't been keeping up on bird flu, and I can understand a lot of people don't want to because they're like, I've done it. I'm out of this game, not going to pay attention. But then a lot of people weren't paying attention in January, February, March until the lockdown came. And then all of a sudden, then they started to pay attention. And they started to listen to whatever the television told them. And the television told them what to think, what to believe, and even how to feel. You're supposed to think that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is deadly. You're supposed to believe that everything that can be done, even if it's contradictory and doesn't make any sense, if it's to stop the spread of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, well, that's good. You're supposed to believe that. And you're supposed to feel very, very afraid. This is how they programmed us. And right now, the reporting, but I was paying attention back when it was SARS-CoV-2 in January, in February, I was paying attention to what was going on. I was reading Bloomberg reporting out of Italy saying that 99% of the people reported as having died from COVID. This was published on March 17th or 18th, 2020, when it had blown up in Italy, but hadn't really come to North America yet. And they said that 99% of the individuals reported as having died from COVID were 80 plus years of age at the end of natural life expectancy. And further, 99% also had 2 or more serious underlying health issues. So we're talking about the old and the sick, people who die when an RSV or a flu or a gastro bug goes around. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people die. 300,000 Canadians in 2020 were expected to die, pandemic or no pandemic. Anyway, how do I see it coming again? What's happening, what they're reporting now on bird flu. Bird flu is an avian influenza virus that transmits from bird to bird to bird. That it impacts birds, avian creatures. And now they are saying that it has jumped from birds to cattle, primarily dairy cattle. And it is believed, they haven't, the science is saying that they haven't fully determined how it transmits from cow to cow, but one, they found it, they say they have found it, this avian bird flu, in milk. And they're saying that unpasteurized milk, it will transmit from one cow to another, but they are also exploring other possible modes of transmission between one cow and another cow. So you have a virus. This is the same story they told us with SARS-CoV-2, that it jumped from a bat to a human. Now they're saying this one started in birds, has moved on to cattle, and now they have said that there have been cases of cattle to human transmission. I'm getting a dry mouth, so I got to take a drink. I'm going to read some of the comments. Cryptomeria says that it was a test run. And that I only did the 2 because I was barred from leaving the country. Daniel Cooperman says, boost this. I like that line. And Cryptomeria was, I was a frontline responder. I still want to leave. Canada did this. We let this go in our labs in Winnipeg. I think there's a very strong potential, and I believe it, I just can't prove it, that the bio lab in Winnipeg was engaged in the research that in tandem with the lab in Wuhan, China, and likely other labs, maybe some in Ukraine, some in the United States. So much has come out. We know now that Anthony Fauci's own NIH was funneling money through sub-grants, kind of muddy the waters, muddy the trail, not direct grants. They would give it to a committee, and then that committee would then funnel the money into Wuhan, China, and they were studying directed evolution, which is just a fancy way of saying gain of function. They had the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and you want to juice it up so that it can transmit human to human, for example, which is where we get onto with bird flu, because I want to keep this on bird flu. So start in the bird population, then it was able to infect cows. This is the story we're being told. And then from cows, it's now, they say it has transmitted to human, it's transmitted from cows to humans, but they say at this point, it hasn't yet mutated and learned how to transmit from one human being to another human being. However, we are being warned that while this isn't guaranteed to happen, there's a very strong possibility that at some point that this bird flu influenza, that it will learn to, it'll mutate and will learn how to transmit from one human being to another human being. Might be through fomite, we'll be told it's maybe through fomite transmission, where I cough, I put my hand down on the table, then I get up and I leave, and then someone sits down, puts their hand down, and then they wipe their eye, and now that's fomite transmission. Might again be aerosol transmission, where we cough, we breathe, we just normal respiration, you're constantly breathing out aerosols, microscopic, invisible to the human eye, smaller than, they're like a 1 micron in size or less, incredibly small. And even though the masks that you wear, all those cloth masks you still see around, the holes in them are at least minimum 5 microns in size. They're the classic example of a shopping cart being used to carry sand. Going to catch up to what's being said. Look at the parliamentary hearings. I looked at the parliamentary hearings with Anthony Housefeather, and I have a video up under my video section, and I actually have the link up there, and I share the screen of his testimony to a subcommittee explaining why parliamentarians are not allowed to see the contracts that our government signed with Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson Johnson, with the pharmaceutical companies. And the reason he said we can't see them, the reason Canadian parliamentarians are not allowed to look at the contracts, is because the vaccine manufacturers rushed the vaccines and didn't do the proper research on them, the research that would normally be done. And so they were at enormous risk for potential harms to Canadians. And given the number of advanced stage cancers, autoimmune conditions, heart conditions, strokes, and goodness knows how much else, thrombosis, all the aneurysms, these are all things I know about firsthand accounts from people I know. I cannot definitively state cause and effect, but there's too strong a correlation between these two things, between all these adverse health events happening only in the people I know who rolled up their sleeves multiple times, but going on. So what I envision happening, if it's bird flu, what I would see them doing is saying that we have a vaccine available for bird flu. What we're being told right now is that they are going to be able to create a vaccine for bird flu, a human vaccine for bird flu, before it has even developed into, before it is mutated to where human to human transmission is possible. So if you think about that slowly, critically, SARS-CoV-2, we had a virus, we were told that it was transmitting human to human through respiratory droplets. You remember that? Garbage. Respiratory droplets. That's why we had to wear the stupid masks, because, oh, it's not aerosol. Respiratory droplets. But it was transmitting human to human. And they were able to isolate it, fixate in on the toxic spike protein. All the companies developed a vaccine, fixated on that one specific component of the virus, the toxic spike protein. And they were able to develop a vaccine in just a few short months. Now they're saying before they even have a virus that is capable of transmitting human to human, they can forget warp speed. Now they're able to time travel. They're able to go into the future, see what that variant of bird flu looks like, and develop a vaccine for it ahead of time. Think about that. This is what they're telling us. They're telling us that they are now able to develop vaccines before a pandemic, before human-to-human transmission of a pathogen. They're telling us that they will be able to develop vaccines for Marburg, SARS, MERS, for a whole host of pathogens before they even emerge, so they can have it ready to go. And in terms of bird flu, what I would see them doing is this. They would say, they would tell us that they've developed a vaccine even before we got it ready, before this new variant came out that allows avian flu, bird flu, to transmit human to human. We've got this whole animal species hopping, birds to cattle, cattle to humans, now human to human. And they'll be able to tell us they have a vaccine all ready to go. And this is what I envision happening if it's bird flu. I can also see it if it's another virus. But just using bird flu as an example, they will say we are on the verge of a pandemic, but thankfully now we have a vaccine before a pandemic starts. And now we will not have to lock down. Remember how horrible those lockdowns were when we damaged our children, when we damaged the vulnerable, when we forced the abused to shelter in place with their abusers. You remember all those horrible things we did to you? Now we don't have to do it because we have a vaccine already ready. And if everyone will just take it, then we won't have to lock down. But if people won't take it, well, then we're going to have to lock down. That's the way I see it playing out, whether it's bird flu or another virus. I think we are being primed to believe that we are being conditioned, programmed to believe that they can develop a vaccine. Remember, up until 2020, in the year 2019 and every year before that, any vaccine that would be developed would take 10 plus years. 10 plus. First, you have to identify the target. Once the target is identified, then you have to do preclinical studies in a lab. After the preclinical studies, if they go well, perhaps you test it on an animal population, maybe rats, mice, ferrets. Then if the animal testing goes well, then you move into human trials and you start with a phase 1 safety trial. And then if the phase 1 safety trial goes well, when it's over, you pore over the results. At that point, you then design a phase 2 trial, which is called an efficacy trial. The first trial, phase 1, is to determine safety. They look at efficacy a bit, but it's primarily focused on safety. Then phase 2 is primarily focused on efficacy. Does it work? And they might have different arms of a phase 2 trial. Maybe one group gets a 5 milligram dose, another gets 10, another gets 15. Different arms to find where's the sweet spot, where do we get the biggest bang for our buck. And after the phase 2 trial is completed, if it is successful, they pore over the results and design the phase 2 trial. And in each one of these steps, there are sub-steps. After you design the phase 1, 2, or 3 trial, it has to be submitted to the regulators, to the FDA in the States, to the EMA in Europe, and they have to approve it. Then they may not. They may say, we want more patients, or we want a better age stratification. You don't have any Asians included. You need different racial subgroups. All manner of things can happen in the clinical trial process, and this is why it takes 10 plus years to complete. And that's just fact. But that fact became fiction. 2020 comes along, and now all of a sudden, we can run phase 1, 2, and 3 all at the same time. The Moderna, the Pfizer, I looked at those two at clinicaltrials.gov, which is the US government repository for all pharmaceutical products undergoing investigation. And both Moderna and Pfizer ran their phase 1, 2, and 3 trials concurrently, all at the same time. So you didn't have to worry about succeeding in phase 1 and succeeding in phase 2 to get into phase 3. They started in phase 3. They ran all 3 at the same time. Going to catch up. Cryptmeria says they got rich on them. And they did, but I don't think I do think there's always a financial component to anything, to any operation. I think this is much further reaching than this is not just mere dollars and cents. That's part of it, but that's not the only part of it. Daniel Cooperman mentions Dr. Judy Miekowitz, who I'm not familiar with, but there are lots of doctors, Dr. Geert van den Bosch, Dr. Ryan Cole, Dr. Peter Jacobson, Malkus out in Alberta. There are countless doctors. There are literally thousands of doctors. Dr. Francis Christian here in Canada, Dr. Byron Bridle. I tend to like to fixate on Canadians. Dr. Byron Bridle, Dr. Francis Christian are 2 prominent Canadian ones that I know of, but there are more. There are tons out there. Even I know a family doctor, not my family doctor, but a family doctor who has no compunction whatsoever about, talking about the risks associated with the COVID jabs. And she doesn't force it on people, although she doesn't state that overly publicly. I don't know. I'm not a patient of hers. No, Cryptomeria says no more lockdowns, and this is what I see as the carrot and the stick. This is what I'm talking about. What's coming? What I see happening in the context of bird flu, but again, it might not be bird flu. It could be something else. Is they're going to they fooled people into thinking that you could take a 10-year process and reduce it into just a few short months. So now that if you can get people to believe that kind of garbage, well, then they'll believe the garbage that they can create a vaccine for a disease before it even becomes pathogenic human to human. Pathogenic simply means disease causing. So before it, because we've got bird flu that went from birds and it crossed into cattle. That's the story. And then cattle began to transmit it between cattle, cattle to cattle, cow to cow. And now it's gone, they say, from cows to humans, but they say right now, as things stand, it has not yet been able to transmit, hasn't mutated to the point where one human being can infect another human being. But we're being told that we're not being told it's an eventuality. We're not saying, they're not saying it's a slam dunk, but they're saying it's, very possible that this could happen. And once it does happen, imagine they say, but thankfully our geniuses in the medical science field worked on getting a vaccine ready ahead of time for this variant. They were working on it before this variant even existed. And now we've got a shot ready for you. And if you'll take it, we won't have to lock down. We won't have to do all those horrible things we did to you, where we told you what products you could buy in the store. Sorry, those are non-essential products. Sorry, Billy, you're just going to have to wear pants size too small. Clothing is not essential. You remember that? Oh, I'm sorry, Susie. I know it's your 6th birthday, but toys are not essential. They're sitting there in the aisle, but they put yellow tape in front of that aisle. I'm not allowed to buy you a toy. Unless I get it from Amazon, then it's okay. Jeff Bezos needs the money. I mean, the degree to which people went along with this garbage nonsense is unreal. And everyone I talk to says the same thing. Everyone's bold and as brass ahead of what happened. Oh, I'm never going to do it again. I got 2 shots. I hear this all the time. I got 2, but I'm never getting another one. Why did you get the 2 then? Well, I needed to travel. I needed to go to school. I needed to work. I didn't want to, but I was forced to, is the way it is often framed. Well, I was forced to get it because whatever. Well, what if you're forced again? Because that's what I see happening. They're going to say, we have the shot already available. If you'll take it, we won't have to lock down. But and then look at the way they manipulated the population last time. They can inundate YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the social media realm. They can create this illusion of mass acceptance. You get the Arnold Schwarzeneggers of the world saying, screw your freedom, you're schmuck, get the vaccine. And then have Stephen Colbert with his dancing hypodermic needles. Remember that? The vaccine song. I actually don't watch Stephen Colbert, but I've seen the video clips of that montage. And then there was I did hear the Vaccinate song by a pride group, a bunch of gay men going, vaccinate, vaccinate, make an appointment. It was a psychological operation on steroids. Bells should have gone off with people when they were offering $1 million lottery prizes and free burger and fries and all this stupid bribery. That's what you do when you're selling a lottery ticket, not when you're offering up a pharmaceutical product. Cryptomeria says, I shared you on X. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. I want to inject my voice as much as possible into the public discourse. And in order to do that, I've started talking on YouTube. This is a miserable, pathetic YouTube station. It's just a voice in the wilderness, for lack of a better expression. And I think I'm reasonably articulate. I don't think I'm no Jordan Peterson or a Ben Shapiro or anyone of that ilk. But at the same time, I think having a voice of someone who's Joe Schlub, nobody, who has a certain degree, because what happens is the media tends to fixate on the ignorant. I remember during the Ottawa convoy protest, CBC went down the road and they saw a woman sitting with her feet outside of a pickup truck. And they said, "Why are you here?" And she said, I got kicked off of Facebook. This has to stop. And that woman's little snippet got onto the CBC nightly news. Now, they took countless. And who do they shine this spotlight on when they want to show someone who is supportive of the Ottawa truckers, opposed to the mandates? They show the most regrettable person, the most stupid sounding person they can find. And I don't mean to be unkind to that lady who was sitting with her feet out, but she's not the type of individual. It's the classic straw man, where you take the opinion with which you disagree and you try and make it look as weak and as feeble as possible. Daniel Cooperman says his spidey sense kept him safe. We all have a voice, and we have to talk as much and as loud and as long as possible, because this is coming back. That is my prediction. I'm not putting a timeline on it. I'm not saying it will be the bird flu. I'm saying it could be the bird flu, could be a Marburg virus, which is a type of hemorrhagic fever. For what it's worth, I'm not completely out of my depth in that my mother was a registered nurse, and I spent 3 years in working for a field ambulance unit. I was in the communications branch of the military, but you learn things like proper donning and doffing procedures for personal protective equipment, PPE. They take you through this stuff. Many people will have seen the old TV show MASH, where Radar and Klinger and Father Mulcahy and other non-medical staff have to move gurneys around. They have to go into the operating room. And so they have to know the proper procedures for things like putting on a mask, which 99.9% of the morons I see wearing masks don't know the basics. I mean, if you're going to wear a mask, hey, fill your boots, okay? Go ahead, go nuts. I don't care. But you're wearing a petri dish on your face. You're breathing on it for goodness knows how long. It's warm, it's moist, it's an ideal breeding ground for bacteria, germs, viruses, pathogens of all manner. And you touch it, and then you touch common surfaces. You sit there, you reach into your dirty pocket, pull out that mask, put it on, adjust it. Then you start talking to someone, then you adjust it again, and then you grab the door handle to go into the store. Well, you've just left all that crap on your mask on that door handle, and the guy coming in right behind you, he's going to touch it too. And you touch your eyes, nose, mouth without even thinking about it. It's a reflex action. Yeah, we do these things. You do these things without even thinking about it, without being aware of it. They're subconscious behaviors. And this is why mask wearing is the dumbest thing, and was actually I'm convinced it leads to cross contamination and it helps spread not just SARS-CoV-2. Goodness knows there's streptococcus. There are countless bacterias and germs and pathogens out there. You get some bacteria is drug resistant, and we've got these Mensa dropouts with their stupid virtue signaling, designer masks. I still see them, and but what are you going to do? Where the population has been so dumbed down that people are convinced, well, I haven't died, so this mask must be what's keeping me alive. I've actually had that argument thrown at me. Well, I haven't gotten sick and died, so obviously the mask is helping. Here's a rock. Throw it in your pocket. If you don't die today, it's because that rock is in your pocket. Never take that rock out of your pocket. If you're going to use specious reasoning, let's take it to the extreme. Cryptomeria says, and this is an interesting point. He says, I'm okay with the tetanus shot, no problem. It's been tested. That's an interesting point because, I've started to reevaluate my own attitude toward a lot of vaccines, and tetanus is one that comes up because, it used to be you step on a rusty nail or something like that. In days gone by, it used to lead quite often to amputation. Now with tetanus shots, can we determine cause and effect? The reason that doesn't happen now is because of tetanus shots. I tend to think that vaccines, older platform, legacy platform vaccines, even for measles, mumps, rubella, I've never known anyone vaccinated against measles to get measles, ever. Everyone I know who's been vaccinated against measles has never gotten measles. That's why we call it an immunization. You're immune. You do not get it. The COVID vaccines, though, are the immunizations that provide no immunity, because everyone I know who's had the COVID jabs has gotten COVID. Just reading on. Daniel Cooperman says he thinks that Marburg is dormant in jab. I don't know about that. Daniel Cooperman, let's breathe in CO2. Your lungs are getting rid of the stuff. You don't want to breathe it back in. Another thing I'll bring up with people is if coal dust. Coal dust is bigger in size than SARS-CoV-2, than a viral aerosol. And I'll ask them, would you wear that mask down into a coal mine? I mean, and coal dust is bigger than SARS-CoV-2. So if you wouldn't wear it down in a coal mine, why are you wearing it against a virus? It's that analogy. Well, I haven't got. Then that's when I get hit with the. Well, I haven't gotten sick and died, so it obviously works. All right, I've never. I might still have it. I do still have it. I saw it just the other day. I had one of those plastic ones. They called them Mingle masks. Was one name. Just a little thin piece of plastic that, like a regular mask, but it had a little chin support so it didn't rest right on your face. Just a thin little piece of plastic in front, kind of like a face shield, but a mask, and it just covered your nose and your mouth. And I wore that useless thing. You want me to wear something useless? I'm going to wear something obviously useless. Anyway, I'm going to finish off reading, and then I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. My mask is on the inside. It's called an immune system, according to Daniel Cooperman, right on. Koopman. And Cryptomeria says, I recycled mine back into a bikini. Well, that's good so long as you're a woman. And it's another one of my unacceptable views. I know what a woman is, and I know what a guy is. And those are the only two choices. It's either window A or window B. There are no other windows. You do not get to be a guy and pretend. So please, if you do recycle masks into a bikini, please be female. Daniel Copeman says, God gave us all the tools to fight viruses in our body. God bless. I think there's such a huge fear of death in our culture, and it's because we have abandoned faith. We do what we see as right in our own eyes, and so many people have bought into this idea that life is simply the end result of billions, probably trillions of random accidents. That there's no meaning, no purpose, in life. There is no creator. Everything's just random accidents. And so when you die, you're fertilizer. And so you want to hang on to this life with both hands. And if you're going to, and that's how come we treated everyone so bad. People got beat up for not wearing masks. People had the police called on them for having friends over in the backyard for a barbecue. Police came and stormed into people's houses and dragged people away because there were too many people in the house. Such garbage. And what they're going to sell us on is that with the next virus, when they want to force poke the population, they're going to say that if we can get everyone to take this, we won't have to do that again. But if people won't take it, then we're going to have to do it again. And you'll remember that lost my train of thought. Function of age. Anyway, so if we get to that stage again, we need a lot more people. Millions of Canadians refused the jabs, and it was probably 1 million or 2 Canadians who were protesting the lockdowns. We need more. We need tons more, which means we need to talk. And most people don't want to talk about it right now because they want to forget the COVID era. They want to forget it even happened. But I'm going to share quickly. And this just came up on my news feed as I was preparing to do this video. And it's by a publication I'd never heard of before called the National Observer. And it's dated May 16th, so just 3 days ago. And it says, the headline is, "The anti-vaxxers are winning the war." And that should give it away right there, the bias to use that pejorative, "you're an anti-vaxxer" term. The article starts, "Most people have long since moved past the pandemic and the impact it had on them. But for a small group of anti-vaccine skeptics, their fight against reason, science, and our collective well-being continues to define their lives. They continue to gerrymander public health data in ways that confirm their biases and obsess over long disproven conspiracy theories, including the supposedly negative impact the COVID vaccine had on mortality rates. Now it seems their rearguard battle has yielded an important victory." And it talks about how anti-vax sentiment is growing. And legacy vaccines are one thing, but when they come out with another jab for bird flu or Marburg or whatever the big bad boogeyman is next time, and they have it ready before it's even become widely pathogenic, widely transmissible, alarm bells should go off. And the only way alarm bells will go off for enough of the population is if those of us who knew what happened during COVID talk, because most of the room is on side with us now. 85% of Canadians are not up to date on their COVID shots. They've gotten off the vaccine, the never-ending vaccine booster train. And it's because they've become skeptical, and a lot of them have suffered adverse events that they are linking to the COVID jabs. But anyway, I think I've made my point 15 times over. The 15% of Canadians who are up to date, who are getting jabbed every 6 months, I have to ask how many of them are living in a long-term care type setting where they don't know what day of the week it is, let alone the month or the year, where whatever they're told to do, they do. and they're just hoping to live until their next diaper change. And I know that sounds crass and mean, but unfortunately it is reality. According to the Long-Term Care Association of Ontario, you can look this up yourself, Long-Term Care Association of Ontario, 86% of their resident population suffers from cognitive issues like dementia, Alzheimer's. 86%. 75% of the residents in long-term care, 74 to 76, it's right around 75. Basically, 3/4 of the population in long-term care in Ontario already have circulatory and cardiovascular issues. Like, it's a very weak, frail population. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for the 9 thumbs up I have already. I always enjoy it when people come on, especially when they're funny comments like Cryptomeria talking about recycling her masks. And I pray it's a she into a bikini. But I'll probably be doing one tomorrow. But in the interim, if you want to subscribe to this channel, greatly appreciated. Who knows what can happen? I've been able to have conversations with Dr. Robert Malone. I guested, I guess you would say, on a podcast with a Christian pastor friend of mine, Dr. George Antonios, who has his channel called Counsel and Might. And I would welcome the opportunity to do more things like that. But in the interim, if I can get up to, well, I guess the next stop is 1,000. So anyway, we'll talk to you again later. God bless, stay strong, and keep up on the news, because forewarned is forearmed. Keep thinking critically and try and anticipate what is coming next and talk about it. Yeah, up to 11. Thanks, Daniel. Salut, mon vieux. J'ai pas demandé si tu parles français. Je débrouille pas pire pour une hostie tête carrée. En tout cas, in any case, thanks very much. Good night, everyone. God bless.